Hey everyone, Ryan here. I just wanted to jump in at the top of this episode. Rosie's not able to be with me for this, but this case that we're covering in this episode is a very popular case, and some huge news just broke about it last night. So I wanted to jump in right at the top and make sure everyone's aware of this. But you probably already know, because it's been very heavily covered already, but Gabby Petito, her remains were found. Cause of death was identified as homicide, strangulation, and just last night the news broke that the remains found next to Brian Laundrie's items in the Carlton Reserve Park were Brian Laundrie. So he's now also gone, and this news is... I can't imagine how Gabby's family feels, the Petito Schmidt family, now that they really don't have a chance for closure, because all of this kind of points to the fact that Brian Laundrie did have something to hide, some kind of secret he couldn't live with, maybe, because what are the odds that he'd be found exactly a month after Gabby was? But it's such a sad situation for both families, but the Petito family, their attorney did let people know that they wouldn't be making any statements about this news until they were emotionally ready. So obviously they're having a really rough time with it. I can't even imagine this finding out. You probably won't get the closure you want. It's so sad, such an unsettling feeling, and I really feel bad for the families. But that said, we just wanted to make sure that this update was in the episode. The rest of the episode, we kind of talk about the timeline, the body cam footage, and we discuss our thoughts on those things. So hopefully you'll still find some value in the rest of the episode. We appreciate you listening, and we hope you're all doing well. Rosie's taking the lead this week. So what have you got for us tonight?
Well, Gabby Petito has been described as a free spirit, funny, easygoing. She loves nature, and she was always up for an adventure.
Sounds kind of like you.
That's what I was going to say, but I didn't want to be like, I'm so cool.
Happens a lot.
Gabby grew up in Blue Point, New York. She graduated from Bayport Blue High School in 2017. In high school, Gabby and a fellow schoolmate, Brian Laundrie, would flirt and become friends. Later, the two would be sweethearts, and in 2019, they decided to move to Northport, Florida, to move in with Brian's parents.
So they lived together?
Yes.
Okay.
Northport is about 34 miles south from Sarasota, Florida, if that helps people kind of gauge where it is on the map. Helps me, because Sarasota is not far from Tampa or Orlando.
Okay.
Gabby's dad, Joe, and stepmom, Tara, would also end up moving to Florida about 3 hours away just to stay somewhat close to their daughter. July 2nd, 2020, Gabby and Brian announced that they were engaged on social media. Something interesting to note is that later on, Petito's mother said that they called off the engagement, partially because of the pandemic and partially because they just wanted to take their time and go with the flow. They decided to take a trip instead for the time being.
Well, that makes sense with the pandemic, working in the wedding industry, doing photography and videography. There were a lot of people who postponed their weddings last year.
Right.
Just because, it's your one special day. If you've been dreaming about having all your friends and family there, last year was a really difficult year to get married.
Right.
But, okay. See, I'm already learning a lot of stuff that I didn't know about before.
Oh, good.
Like how she lived with him and the parents lived kind of close.
Mm-hmm. And Gabby's mom stayed up in New York.
Okay.
Anyway, Gabby's dad, Joe, liked Brian. He felt like there was nothing that indicated any problems. And he actually had a little nickname for Brian, Brianna, to keep him in place, to keep him in line and intimidate him a little bit. So they had like a playful, like don't mess with my daughter type relationship.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, everyone knows this story has a horrible ending. And so it's hard to talk and hear about these things now about, the parents, Gabby's parents' relationship with Brian. and everything. But we hear that a lot, that people think this is a great person, they could never do something like this, or it's shocking that they could do something like this. And of course, we haven't gotten all the answers yet in this case, but there's a lot of suspicious evidence pointing to Brian. So,
right.
It is a little weird just hearing about the past relationship between Brian and Gabby's parents. It just gives you that icky feeling.
Gabby's best friend, Rose Davis from North Point, Florida, says that she had known the couple for 2 years. She said that Brian had a sweet and kind composure, but he also had a controlling and jealous side. Sometimes Gabby would stay at Rose's house for the night just to get away from Brian because of how intense their arguments got. She said overall, though, Brian was kind towards her and Rose did consider him as a friend. 22-year-old Gabby worked really hard and she saved up the money to buy a white 2012 Ford Transit van with her 23-year-old boyfriend, Brian Laundrie.
And this is the white van that's in all the footage.
Exactly. Stuff. They converted it into a camper. They worked super hard on it. You could tell that Gabby was like beaming with pride. She has like a video where she shows the inside of the van and home sweet home and very cute.
She was just starting a travel YouTube channel where she planned to have a lot of adventures in that van.
She had made a post on social media about it with the caption, "Garden on Wheels, new van means new adventures." So, I don't know. That just sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, it is. And you would be the kind of person that would live in this tiny van, make it into your little travel home, and go on adventures like that.
Earlier in their relationship, Gabby and Brian had gone across the country before in a Nissan Sentra. I feel like I always say Nissan wrong. Is that how you say it?
I don't know.
The two decided that they wanted to go all in and simplify their lives so that they could travel full time. But they needed something that they could sleep in and that didn't burn through gas so much. So that's what made them decide that they wanted to save up for this van.
Interesting. So the van got better gas mileage than a Nissan
Sentra?
That must be an SUV, though.
I honestly couldn't tell you. On July 2nd, 2021, Brian and Gabby left for their adventure.
Oh, it's a car. Wow.
Okay, that's what
I'm really shocked then that it had worse gas mileage than a van.
Maybe they figured, like, taking into consideration other
the things. Space.
Yeah. They left starting in Blue Point, New York. First, they had celebrated Gabby's little brother's graduation from high school with her family, and after that, they left for their big trip. They planned on being gone for about 4 months and ending up in Oregon to celebrate Halloween with a friend. They made their way to Scott City, Kansas, snapping some photos of monuments and parks and putting them on their social media. Next, they made it to Colorado Springs, Colorado. They stayed at a campground in the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Reserve, and they even had the opportunity to go sand surfing. Like, sand surfing to me sounds like an absolute blast.
Really?
Yeah.
To me, it sounds miserable. Like having sand particles flying up in my eyes all the time.
It looked so cool in the photos.
Now, okay, I pulled up Gabby's Instagram here. Because, I still have that picture of you from last week.
I hate that picture. Thanks for picking it.
That. Well, sorry. Maybe I'll put some of these photos up that represent what we're talking about here. For the people who are watching this on YouTube, this is Gabby at the Great Sand Dunes. All right, so this was 14 weeks ago as of recording this. Is this the sand surfing board then?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Doesn't that look cool? I mean, it's like snowboarding.
I was picturing like a sandstorm with a bunch of sand flying up into my eyes.
I don't think they go when it's storming.
I'm just not a fan of sand on my body. Anyway, okay. All right. Very interesting.
Okay. The next spot that they went to was the Zion National Park in Utah, followed by a handful of other beautiful national parks in Utah. You'll see a lot of pictures there.
Okay. Yeah, I have a few here of Gabby at Zion National Park.
Isn't that a cool camping spot?
Wow.
So cool.
That's a nice tent, too. Oh, cool. What kind of instrument is that?
I couldn't tell you.
Something I should know.
Yeah, it is. Gabby, she wanted the van life lifestyle, and she was trying to create a presence on social media, as you can see if you're watching this. She had a great following. She documented her adventures almost daily, and they were very professional looking, very artsy, creative, not just some blah photos. You can tell she took a lot of time.
This is really cool framing she's so small in this picture.
After hiking in the canyon lands, 12 days go by without any posting on social media. This probably doesn't seem like a big deal to many of us, but when you keep in consideration how much she was posting before, and also her goal of having such a large following and documenting everything that they do, it is strange. Now, she does pick back up, and she makes another post about the Arches National Park in Utah. It's a giant rock arch, and Gabby's right next to it. I think you might... Yep, that one. From there, they go camping in the Devil's Garden.
It's a really cool spot.
Yeah, super cool. It made me want to go to Utah, and I had not thought that I wanted to go to Utah before. In Moab City, police received a call. Some people reported seeing a gentleman slapping a woman repeatedly. I say gentleman because that's what was on the call. The callers were driving by, so they didn't know exactly what was going on. I was hoping that we could play the 911 call, or partially, for our listeners.
Hi, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, I'm calling. I'm right on the corner of Main Street by Moonflower, and we're driving by, and I'd like to report a domestic dispute. Florida with the white van, Florida license plate, white land, gentleman,
Where's
about
it at?
5'6" beard. They just drove off. They're going down Main Street. They made a right onto Main Street from Moonflower.
Or what were they doing?
Cooperative, but what'd you say?
What were they doing?
We drove by, and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
The dispatcher sounds so annoyed in this call, doesn't he?
I know. I was thinking that too. So why are you calling us?
Yeah, it's really
what
weird.
It seemed like.
So clinical and forensic psychologist, her name is Veronique Valliere, says that the fact that people saw Brian slapping Gabby in public, just that alone, should be very concerning. Usually domestic abuse takes place privately, but when it becomes public like that, it suggests a level of severity and escalation that's highly concerning. So something to keep in mind.
Well, especially knowing what we know now, that she's dead.
Right.
And he came home safely without her. So
police were able to spot the van and were surprised when the van ran over the curb. You can see this in the body cam footage. They're like, whoa. Okay.
Unfortunately, the camera's just staring at the steering wheel.
Right.
But actually, let's I'm going to pull up the body cam footage.
Yeah.
So we can play little parts of it.
Yeah, that'd be good. And for over an hour, police have Gabby and Brian separated, and they're trying to piece together the situation.
Currently doing 45 miles an hour. Zone through here is 25. Oh! Subject just hit the curb.
You could tell how shocked he was by that.
Correction, speed limit is 15.
So he's doing 45 and a 15? Is that what he said? We're going to show when the officer was approaching the car.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And discuss it a little bit.
You want to place your vehicle into park and go ahead and turn it off for me?
Ugh, immediately you can see how distressed Gabby is. She's like crying. And right away, Brian is apologizing. Why is he apologizing?
Well, same with Gabby.
Already.
She's saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I would highly recommend watching Derek Van Schaik's coverage of this because he really points out a lot of things having to do with the body language that, kind of give more context to what's going on in this video. I've recommended his videos in the past, but I think he's really good with body language because he doesn't just take every little thing that stereotypical body language readers would. He looks at the body language clusters, so it's a lot easier to trust that he knows what he's talking about. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and straightening up the back of the van before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean, because sometimes I have OCD and sometimes I just get really frustrated. Not like mean towards him. I just like, I guess my vibe is like I am really like in a bad mood. And I was just saying, I'm sorry if I'm in a bad mood. I've just been really stressed. I had so much work I was doing on my computer this morning.
Oof.
So Gabby keeps using these words like OCD and anxiety throughout the whole body cam footage. She will repeat this over and over and over again. Her father would later say that Gabby did not suffer from OCD or anxiety that he knew of, but rather she keeps describing her situation with these easy mental health words. The psychologist Valier says that Gabby was describing her stress and distress to the police officers. We quickly learn from the body cam footage that Gabby quit her job to go on this trip with Brian and try to make a living doing the documentation of her trip and travels. She's vulnerable and dependent on Brian now because of this. Gabby is obviously upset and shaken, and she can't stop crying. She's fidgeting and she's jumpy. On the other hand, we'll see that Brian is cool and collected the whole time he's being talked to. Like Gabby, Brian blames her for the altercation. He even goes on as far as tease the police officer that she's crazy. He downplays the situation and makes it seem like Gabby is completely overreacting. He chuckles throughout the whole conversation with police. He's joking about locking the van and walking away, putting them in separate directions. Though the psychologist says that this may have been a go-to of abuse for Gabby, that he would lock her out of the car and refuse to let her in. And remember, Brian already told the police that he keeps control of the keys because he's scared that she will drive off without him. But then in the end of the body cam footage, Gabby tells the officer that she's wondering how far the campground is to park the van because she's not used to driving and she's nervous about driving the van. It sounds like she's barely ever driven it.
A lot of red flags in there. And at this point, it's like, I don't care how cool and collected he came across. The fact that we know is her body was found. She's gone.
Well, that's what the point, is that he seemed so calm and collected. If they were in the same situation, you would think he'd show some more emotion.
Yeah.
Do you want to just show a snippet of Brian talking to the authorities?
Started at the beginning, well, I don't want to go too far back, but we've been in Beyond Land for the past week or so, traveling around, and the flies here are pretty intense, so the flies have definitely been getting to her, and then my feet are dirty and everything, so I think that our little squabble started because we were hanging out at the coffee shop, and when we got back to the van, there was some dirt and stuff in the van, and I moved our food around, it was a little disorganized, so she gets a little...
Will you take those? Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Do you need any water?
That's okay.
It's hot out here.
We were going to get water because we ran out, but it's okay. No, it's alright. I don't like plastic bottles. It's okay. Thank you, though. But we just had a little disagreement there. Disagreement was just that she was getting a little worked up, and I was saying, "No, it's okay. Thank you so much."
As long as it's cool, that's good.
I just want to jump in quick and point out how, eager to please he is. The police officers. He's overly friendly, overly apologetic. In my experience, you just can't trust people that are like this. You know? He's obviously just trying to make a good impression and get them off of his back because he's so concerned with pleasing them. And then on the other hand, Gabby is so obviously in serious distress. Do you have anything else you want to say before we watch her body cam footage?
It gets to the point where Brian and the authorities are chit-chatting so much and playing around that even the police officer says it sounds like she was the primary aggressor. So they've gotten buddy-buddy, and they're starting to question Gabby for her actions. Like you're going to just play. They say things like, why was she slapping Brian? What were her intentions behind slapping Brian? Was she trying to inflict physical pain on Brian?
This is so weird, though, that even though the 911 call was that the guy was slapping her, it somehow turns around on her and they let them both go. Like, they didn't look any further into this. It's crazy. Especially after this conversation with Gabby. Like, I think the police officer made a huge mistake in not being able to interpret how scared she was and how in distress she was.
Right. Gabby will even have to defend herself, saying things like, "No, I wasn't trying to hurt him, just trying to get him to stop telling me to calm down."
Okay.
Hey, how are you? My name's Eric. I'm with Moab Police. What's your name?
Gabby.
Gabby, how old are you?
I'm 22.
What happened? What's going on?
I'm just having a very stressed morning.
Yeah. Is this your husband or boyfriend?
My fiance.
Fiance? Is he a pretty good guy?
Yeah.
What happened over at Moonflower?
Well, I was just really stressed this morning trying to get a lot of work done, and I was apologizing to him. I had thrown a bunch of stuff in the back, and all our bags were back there, and I was just apologizing. I was like, I'm sorry that I get so stressed out because I have OCD, and I was just like organizing stuff, and sometimes I just have a mean attitude, but I'm not trying to be mean about just straightening things up and stuff, so I was just apologizing, but I guess I said it in like a mean tone, and he got really frustrated with me, and he locked me out of the car and told me to go take a breather, but I didn't want to take a breather, because I wanted to get going. We're out of water.
So it kind of made you more upset.
Yeah,
it didn't help calm you, it made you more upset.
Yeah.
So then what happened?
And, so our goal was to come here and come refill our water.
Are you guys living out of the van right now? On travels?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just really.
So what happened after he locked you out? I told you to take a breather.
Well, he walked away to go take his own breather, but I wanted to sit in the car because all my stuff was in the car. I had none of my bags. I was working on something at the moment in the car, and he told me to just relax for a second, and I didn't want to relax, so I got real mad. And, I mean, I don't need to be mad.
Yeah, it happens. Then what happened?
And then I told him to drive and get water because I'm really thirsty.
Yeah? Is there something on your cheek here? Looks like, did you get hit in the face? Kind of looks like something like hit you in the face. And then over on your arm? Shoulder, right here. That's new, huh? It's kind of a new mark.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Can I see the other side of your face? So, what happened here and here?
I'm not sure. It was
First name
Brian. Really fast. I was just trying to get in the back of the car, and his backpack was on the back, and it got me.
So the backpack got you. So there's two people that came to us and told us that they saw him hit you. There's two people saying that they saw him punch you. We're just independent witnesses by Moonflower.
Well, to be honest, I definitely hit him first.
Where'd you hit him?
I slapped him in the face.
You slapped him first? And then what, just on his face?
And he kept telling me to shut up.
How many times did you slap him?
Just a couple.
And then what? And then his reaction was to do what?
Grab my arm so I wouldn't slap him.
He just grabbed you?
Yeah.
Did he hit you though? I mean, it's okay if you're saying you hit him, and then I understand if he hit you, but we want to know the truth if he actually hit you.
I guess, yeah, but I hit him first.
Where did he hit you? Don't worry, just be honest.
He grabbed my face, just I guess. He didn't hit me in the face, he didn't punch me in the face or anything.
Did he slap your face or what?
Well, he grabbed me with his nail, and I guess that's why it looks. I definitely have a cut right here because I could feel it when I touch it. It burns. But
okay. So has he been drinking?
No, we don't drink.
So I would say it's safe to say that the footage is pretty much like this the whole way through, on and off, talking to Brian or with Gabby. And it's interesting that they do notice Gabby's cheek and the marks on her arms, but because of the marks that they see on Brian, they decide that, like they said, it takes two when the police officer was talking to Gabby.
So what's really confusing to me is that when he talks to her for the first time, he notices the marks. Mm-hmm. He tells her that the 2 witness statements that he got said that Brian was punching or hitting her. Mm-hmm. And then later, after he talks to Brian, he comes back and he says, well, according to all the stuff we got, it all lines up perfectly that you were the first aggressor.
Right.
You were the one that started this, and you're the one we're looking at as a suspect. Mm-hmm. I don't know how it went from taking those 2 actual 911 calls that were given by unbiased third parties of him punching her, and then... I mean, okay, she did say that she hit him first, but when he asked how many times, she didn't have a solid answer. It almost felt like she was just saying that. Like, if it really happened, she would have had, like, a solid number in her head. Like, how many times did you hit him? But she said, I don't know, a couple. Mm-hmm. And this whole time, she's trying to defend Brian, but when they talk to Brian, he's throwing her under the bus.
Right. But like jokey, playfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's too eager to please. He's throwing her under the bus. He's trying to hide something.
He's downplaying.
She's just trying to get on with her day, protect him so they can both leave together. Sadly, she's just looking at her eyes to me, who I'm not a professional in any way, but just reading her body language, her eyes, her sadness, she's thinking a lot of things that she doesn't feel comfortable saying to this guy because she just wants to get on with her day. She doesn't want to get Brian in trouble. And her eyes are just in so much pain. But
well, at the end of the body cam footage, police officers decide not to press any charges, but to have the couple separated for the night. Gabby is given the keys to the van and told where the nicest and nearest public bathhouse is that she can use to relax, and Brian is brought to a hotel. The couple are told not to communicate until the morning. No calls, no texts. I also want to say that even though we're picking this apart, the police officers that were on the scene, like, they didn't get to pause and rewind and go through the footage. They're also in the blazing hot sun. Like, it was an obviously extremely hot day. So I don't want to, like, put any blame on them because they were genuinely just trying to do their best. And a lot of police officers don't have the right training to deal with these types of situations.
And I do wonder, too, if, like she mentioned, they were out of water and it's really hot. Like, I wonder if dehydration played a part in any of this with just Brian and Gabby.
Yeah, it could have. So the next day, Brian posts a handful of photos about the beauty of the Arches National Park in Moab. In his caption, he writes about how we're all related to trees and a lot about evolution. It's a very long post and kind of like, what are we doing here?
This was on Brian's social media?
It's on Brian's social media. I thought it was a little interesting because, I mean, obviously he wasn't going to talk about the big police situation that happened the day before, but it also seemed like he doesn't really mention anything about Gabby or their adventure together, just like this really deep spiritual belief that he has with trees. Anyway, Gabby and Brian meet up and they start making their journey to Salt Lake City. About a week later, on August 19th, Gabby posts a picture of the interior of the van looking out. It's unclear where the couple were located at the time. Her caption is about how after talking to Brian about how respectful people seem to be in the park, she then sees a guy leave his plastic wrappers and trash on a picnic table and leave, and just how, like, annoying people are.
Yeah, again, I have the picture up right here for those who are watching.
Gabby also posts her one and only YouTube video on their van life channel, Nomadic Static. The video is entitled Van Life, Beginning Our Van Life Journey. It's about 8 minutes long. It's very nicely done. And it has little snippets of where they had gone so far, cute poses of them over some music. And in the end, Gabby shows off the van. And like I said earlier, it's super cute that she had everything organized and decorated exactly how she wanted it. She was really proud of this space and how she made it into a livable area for them.
And I'll just show a snippet of the video. Again, this is on Nomadic Static with a K at the end.
Gabby Petito never goes outside.
But yeah, just want to show a little bit.
On August 24th, Gabby and Brian were said to be leaving Utah and making their way to the Grand Teton National Park. Gabby's mom, Nicole, FaceTimed Gabby sometime during that day. On August 25th, Gabby made her last post on social media. It was a stack of 3 photos. She was standing next to the Monarch Wall, which is close to Salt Lake City, Utah. She's wearing a brown wrap skirt and black short-sleeve crop tee. In one of the 3 photos, she's holding a tiny crochet pumpkin, and her caption is Happy Halloween. Gabby called her mom on the phone sometime during that day. She told her mom that they had checked out the Tetons and they were planning a trip to Yellowstone next. On August 25th or 26th, the cashier named Sunny Mason, who can't remember the date exactly, from a store called the Victor Emporium, which is located about 30 miles away from the Grand Tetons, says that she saw Gabby Petito. She said a girl came in the store with long blonde hair and a guy, and they ordered a milkshake. A worker at the store accidentally mispronounced Gabby's name, calling her Gabby, which, I mean, that is weird. But regardless, the man that was with Gabby, who we're assuming is Brian, was visibly upset. Next, Sunny said...
About the name?
Yeah, the name mispronunciation.
Of all the things that could trigger someone? I mean, I can see how it could happen, because in the coffee shops, when they write the name on the cup, it's a super fast scribble. I can see why it would look like an O.
Sunny said that she was talking to Gabby about her flower tattoo, and Gabby had mentioned that she was visiting national parks with her fiancé, and Yellowstone was next on their list. Sunny said that it seemed like Brian was prompting Gabby to tell Sunny that she was engaged and that Brian was her fiancé. It just seemed like kind of forced and awkward, and it didn't flow in the conversation. And Sunny also said it seemed like Brian felt slighted, like Gabby wasn't excited enough about being engaged and this being the fiance. Just kind of odd behavior.
Oof. So he's like passively, aggressively controlling.
On August 27th, Gabby was seen checking out of the Fairfield Inn and Suites, which is less than 700 feet away from the FBI office in Salt Lake City.
It also seems like he's very concerned with the outside appearance to people and like expects Gabby to live up to this idea in his head, but when she doesn't, he like prods her.
That night, Gabby and Brian went to lunch at a Tex-Mex restaurant called the Mary Piglets in Jackson, Wyoming. Nina Angelo and her boyfriend Matt England were eating at the same restaurant at the same time and saw the couple get into a big fight as they were leaving. Nina said that Gabby was in tears, and Brian was upset and yelling at the staff and the restaurant hostess. He went in and out of the restaurant several times while Gabby stood outside crying. He seemed to be mad about the bill or not having enough money or thinking that the bill was too much money. On Brian's 4th trip inside the restaurant to verbally assault the staff, Gabby came in trying to get Brian to leave and also apologizing for his actions.
Oh, I hadn't heard about this.
Nina said that, quote, he was creeping me out, and Gabby seemed to be at her breaking point.
So he was getting more out of control than what we saw in the body cam footage. I mean, it's really evident to people around them that he's high-strung and frustrated.
On the same day, Gabby's mother, Nicole, got a text from her daughter that said, quote, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." Nicole thought this was really odd because Stan is her grandfather, and Gabby never referred to her grandpa by his real name. It was very out of character for her.
So it's almost like she didn't send the text.
Right. Now we'll talk about the van being spotted. and it was spotted by the Bethune family.
That YouTube, the blog family?
Right. They are also a van life family. It consists of Jen, Kyle, and their 3 kids and 2 dogs that live in a 1983 Silver Eagle bus. The family travels around the country and documents everything on their YouTube channel, pretty much what Gabby wanted to do herself. Jen was recording their day in the Grand Tetons when she noticed a white van parked in the Spread Creek dispersed camping area on August 27th. It caught her attention because the license plates were from Florida, and Jen's family is also from Florida. So they wanted to stop and introduce themselves, but as they passed the van, they noticed that it was dark inside, it looked locked up, and they figured that the owners were just out on a hike, and they moved on. This was between 6 and 6:30 p.m.
And we're just going to show that clip where the van was spotted real quick. Here it is. Yeah, you can see it's just kind of parked in the middle of a trail, in the middle of nowhere.
Now later, when they would be editing this footage and they realized whose van that might be, they notified authorities immediately.
Ugh.
On August 29th, Miranda Baker and her boyfriend claimed to have picked up Brian as a hitchhiker in the Grand Teton Park around 5:30 p.m. at Coulter Bay. He said he was alone and needed a ride to Jackson. Now again, this is like their word, what they saw. Brian said that he had been camping on his own for a few days while his fiancée was working on their social media page. They started driving, and all of a sudden Brian started freaking out and said that he needed to get out of the car immediately and to pull over. So they dropped him off at 6:09 that same night, just a few minutes later, or about half an hour later.
He couldn't make it through a 10-mile drive?
No, like he just all of a sudden had this panic attack in the car.
Okay.
Nicole, Gabby's mom, got another text from Gabby's phone on the 30th, but she doesn't think it was from her daughter. The text read, "No service in Yosemite." That was it. On September 1st, Brian shows up to North Point, Florida, where his parents live. He comes home alone with the van. Now, this is where it's so weird to me that, like, immediately Brian's parents weren't like, "Where's Gabby?" or "She's missing, let's go to the police." You know what I mean? They just, I don't know what they did, but Brian was there with his family on September 1st. The only one of Brian's family who seemed to be trying to help was Brian's sister, Cassie Laundrie. She would agree to doing interviews, whereas Brian's family would absolutely refuse to give any words to public.
That's sketchy. And didn't Gabby's parents write a letter to his parents? Like, please talk? So Brian showed up at North Point, Florida on the 1st. On Friday the 10th, Gabby's mom, Nicole, decided to call police, saying that they had not heard from Gabby for about 10 days, and that was enough to know that something was wrong. Yeah.
She said that nobody wanted to call her missing because she was an adult, and adults can do what they want. They don't need to check up with their mom. So that's what the police had.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. On September 11th, Gabby's mom and stepdad, Jim, found a detective willing to take on the case and reported her missing. Down in Northport, the couple's van was being processed for evidence. When questioned, Brian refused to talk to the police or the FBI. On September 15th, Brian was considered a person of interest because he was the last known person to be with Gabby Petito before she went missing. And the police claimed that he was hindering the investigation. And think about it, he had arrived a month earlier, drove Gabby's van home without Gabby in it. He didn't tell police that she was missing right away, and his family wasn't being helpful or telling police that Gabby was missing either. I did try to play devil's advocate a little here, but I still can't figure any reason to back up Brian not telling police right away that his fiancée was missing. This love of his life. Stephen Bertolino, Brian's lawyer, also told Brian not to talk to anybody. So it's just fishy all around. A few days later, on September 17th, the Laundrie family claimed that Brian was missing and had been missing since the 14th, a Tuesday. They said that he took his Mustang and had gone for a hike in the county park called the Carlton Reserve. That's 25,000 acres large. He left his phone and wallet at home. And this is crazy because there were so many people outside of his home chanting and staking out, wanting to know where Gabby was. I don't know how, he just, took the Mustang and went missing.
When were her remains found?
That's later in the...
Okay. So that's probably why.
True.
Until her remains were found, there wasn't, this huge, okay, he did it mindset. It was more what the heck happened? Okay.
Brian's parents said they only took a backpack, which later would be found, and his family looked for him that Wednesday, but couldn't find him. And obviously they didn't find him if this park is 25,000 acres large. I mean, it's crazy. This did seem like a good choice for Brian to hide out in because he's a huge nature guy. But also, I learned that this park in particular, with Florida's rainy season, it's so muddy and swampy and difficult to go on the trails. I don't know why he would go there. In fact, 90% of the trails in this reserve were flooded. It's full of snakes and alligators. It doesn't seem like a nice place to clear your head. Back in the Grand Teton National Park, police and FBI started searching endlessly, trying to find clues or evidence, anything that could help find Gabby. Because this was the last validated place where Gabby was seen, most, if not all, efforts were placed here to find her. On September 19th, Gabby was found near an undeveloped campsite along the eastern border of the Grand Teton National Park, and her death was ruled a homicide. There were no trash removal or drinking water services here, so it's a very rural area, not just like a normal campsite. A federal arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie for unauthorized use of a credit card has been warranted. Brian used a Capital One bank card and someone's personal identification number to make unauthorized withdrawals or charges worth more than $1,000 during the period in which Petito went missing. We don't know what he purchased with these cards or who they belong to at this time.
Clearly he was getting ready to disappear if he's withdrawing money.
Right? Earlier on August 31st, Brian was seen using Gabby's debit card at a gas station.
Her debit card?
And so it raises questions like...
Is he taking her money?
Yeah.
That's what he's withdrawing?
Police were maybe thinking that Gabby wasn't allowed to use her own card, and it was in Brian's possession most of the time. But, I mean, that's all speculation at this point. The family of Gabby Petito are starting the Gabby Petito Foundation that will help other people in similar situations to give resources and guidance to families who have to bring their children home and have no way of doing so. They've gotten countless flowers from people around the world, and they're hoping that instead of these gracious gifts, that people will donate money to their foundation via the Johnny Mack Foundation, which is a foundation that Gabby's mother is a volunteer at and a board member of. The Gabby Petito Foundation website is still currently in the works. So that's pretty much all I have right now for this case.
All right. Thank you for listening. Sorry my camera keeps going out of focus. I think I forgot to switch it to face focus from the spot focus, so it keeps focusing right here. Do you have anything else to say before we wrap it up?
Just a few things. This case has brought a lot of attention to different indigenous missing women that have gone missing in the same area that Gabby went missing, and kind of intrigued my interest. So our next episode is going to be about the indigenous people and how many people have gone missing and haven't been found. Also, we're going to have a couple listener stories in the following weeks. I want to make sure that those people knew that we haven't forgotten about them and that their stories are in the works. So thank you guys for reaching out to us and emailing us your story and being patient with us.
Wasn't it Indigenous People Day last week?
It was, and that's when I wanted to put the episode out.
Yeah, we were bummed that we couldn't release it on the right day. But
yeah. But at least we're going to have an episode about it. So I'm excited about it. I'm also going to work on a Patreon episode that is linked to Indigenous people. I'm going to talk about Pocahontas and the real story of her, because that also came up in my episode. So
all right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And before we go, I want to say thank you so much to our new patron, Tia. We really appreciate you. Thanks for helping to support the podcast. And thank you so much to all of our patrons. We really appreciate that support, and it really means a lot. So thank you. Well, thanks, Rosie.
You are welcome.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Bye.